All right, welcome to a special edition of Ramblers Unleashed. We are calling this 8 Bit Unleashed. And yes, we will have a little bit of wrestling talk, but not until we get to the systems that had wrestling games. I'm Max Mages. You may remember me from Ramblers Unleashed and the ECW Review Show. And this is my co host, CM. I don't always unmute my mic when streaming video games Styles. You may remember him from Ramblers Unleashed, Destroying Kayfabe, Kick, and my personal favorite, The Roast of Austin Hollis. I roasted him unmercifully that night, as one does on a roast. You roast everyone. In fact, I taught all the participants that night. How you doing, Styles?
I'm good. I'm glad I'm catching strays right out of the gate. Let me tell you, I when you said let's do a special edition to the Ramblers Unleashed, and we created this new theme of 8-bit Unleashed. I am super excited to talk about this because me as a gamer, I love games. I love retro. I just love gaming in general. With that being said, there he is.
Yeah.
Take it away.
Yeah, look, we love video games. That's part of the reason we're doing this. There's some other reasons, but we're not going to go into those. We're just going to just remind everybody we love video games. And while we are 8-bit unleashed, we are not starting with the 8-bit systems. We will get to them. We are going to go through the world of video games. And to do that, we have to start at the beginning and tell you guys how we got to where we are today. And then maybe once we get all caught up and in the modern era and talk about that, maybe we'll just keep going and talk about games that are coming out or games that we've recently been playing, stuff like that. For example, I am currently playing the Rise of the Tomb Raider, which came out in the middle of last decade, so 2015. It was one of a series of 3 games that all came out. I'm really enjoying it. I beat the first one, the Game of the Year edition of in the first of those 3, and now I'm on this one, and then next I'll play Shadow of the Tomb Raider. And if you tune into Kick, you'll see that my friend over here, he plays a lot of retro games, but outside of what you stream, what games have you been playing lately?
Well, aside from doing retro, I mean, I am very variety between retro games, classic games. I gotta call some of these games that we played in the past, like the PS3 and 360, and that they're classic titles. They're not exactly retro, even if they're past a 15-year mark. But when it comes to like modern day games, I still play GTA. I do a lot of Rocket League, PUBG. I'm very competitive with a lot of stuff. Recently, I did get my hands on Battlefield 6, thanks to RedSec being a huge battle royale success. It convinced me that it's time to just get into multiplayer mode. I do want to play the campaign very, very badly. I'm going to wait until next year after I get my surgery done because doing mouse and keyboard kind of starting to irritate the left hand. But I mean, aside from that, I mean, anything retro, I do everything between OG hardware and emulation. So it's just there's a whole lot. And then I got expansions, so we're going to be talking about that down the road too. I can't wait.
And we're going to get more into this question when we get to the more modern stuff. But you mentioned Battlefield 6, so I have to ask, what do you think of all the controversy surrounding Battlefield 6? And we're not going to list everything that's going on, but there is some major backlash from the gaming community. And what do you think of this controversy?
Well, if we're talking about what I think we're talking about, the shift of power and everything within the company, that's the biggest controversy aside from the game itself. I mean, everything about
I'm specifically talking the game itself. We'll
so
discuss the within later.
that we'll have to talk about later because I haven't really heard anything within the community about any of the game. All I've heard about was everything behind the scenes with the publishers and the sales.
Okay. Well, I'll tell you what, we will save an in-depth discussion on the controversy for once we get into modern gaming. I just figured I'd ask. I mean, there's controversy over technical stuff, over graphics.
No, I know Black Ops 7 was getting a lot of controversy, a lot of backlash because of it using AI technology to replace some of the stuff. It was taking scenes from movies, putting it into the Black Ops 7 game. As for BF6, I haven't. Now that you say that, I gotta look that up and see what kind of controversy you saw that I haven't yet. So that's very interesting to talk about.
Yeah, I've been hearing a lot of talk in some of my message groups about how people are really upset with this. And maybe I was thinking of the wrong game, but I googled it, and yeah, there is some backlash from fans on this, and it's over the game itself. But like I said, we'll get back into that later. I This series is going to cover, in my opinion, some of the most interesting controversies in the history of video games. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about games that will never be released, no matter what the company tells you. We're going to talk about urban legend. We're going to talk about all kinds of stuff. But let's get this kicked off and let's get into this. Video games have come a long way. Modern systems have graphics and processing systems that make some games look very realistic. They weren't always that way. Some of you, Styles and I, might be old enough to remember Pong. It was literally a black dot bouncing back and forth between two lines. The idea was to get your opponent to miss the ball when it came to their side. But we have to go back further than that. What would a show talking about video games be without bringing up pinball? The first commercially successful coin operated pinball machine, it was fairly simple compared to what we have today. It was released by a man named David Gottlieb in 1931. It was called Baffleball. For me, the true initial pinball era was probably the 50s, greasers and diners spending all day playing pinball machines. Um, that's when Gottlieb really got them up and running with more intricate games and themes to the games, as opposed to the early editions were just the ball bouncing around. Then in the 80s, you saw them in every arcade,
Mm-hmm.
and they were played a lot. If you go back and you see any footage from the 80s, or even in TV shows and movies that are set in the 80s or were made in the 80s, you'll see that pinball is one of the more popular games in an arcade. I know some of you aren't old enough to remember what I'm talking about, so please go check out Stranger Things and see an 80s arcade with the pinball machine. But and the pinball machine is so relevant to what we talk about, because now there's like video game components to pinball machines. Most computers, Windows computers. I can't speak on a Mac. I've never owned one of those. Most Windows computers, up until like a couple software generations ago, came with Space Cadet, which was a video pinball game. So if you're like me, you've played quite a bit of pinball, and it's a fun game. What was your favorite pinball game through the years, Styles?
Oh man, I'm glad you said that because I still play pinball from time to time, mainly during the summer, like spring, summer, and right into fall. I go to a place called Hershey Park. It's not far from here. They have two arcades in there, and the biggest one they have has about like 6 or 7 pinball machines. There's so many. If you ever played High Speed Chase, there was also Black Knight 2000. Those were great games. If you ever get a chance, and let me tell you, it's weird, but it's interesting and fun to play. It's called Hercules, and if you've seen it, it's huge. It's not your basic pinball machine. You gotta stretch your arms out, and it's like a skee ball that's in there. It's a big, heavy ball, and the paddles are not exactly strong like they used to be, but back in the day, these things could take a beating tossing this thing around, and we're talking this thing's like 2.5 times the size of a regular old pinball machine. So imagine having something like that in your living room or down in your basement or even in your garage when you want to play. Like, bring your friends over. Ain't no one stealing that thing because it's just too damn heavy to even carry. But there were so many other games, and over the years, and I'm sure you can agree to this, the evolution of pinball has completely changed. Back when it started, there was two ways of it happening. Um, Bars had pinball machines, but they weren't exactly traditional, where you hit you bolt it back, and then there's like numbers. You're probably like bingo on a certain pinball machine, and then other ones it was just it ran off flippers, and then it had the bouncers up in the top, and but over the years, you saw the dynamics change within pinball. There was like ice hockey, there was baseball. If you ever played the one called Comet, it works great for Hershey Park because Hershey Park has a roller coaster called Comet, and my son hates that roller coaster. Why? Because it's wooden. So
I,
I
I, I
never.
truly believe wooden roller coasters are the best. That's my
I,
opinion.
I I'm a classic wooden roller coaster rider, but with the way roller coasters have devolved over the years due to age and everything else, it's like I don't blame him one bit. Me, as I get older, I'm thinking to myself, maybe it's a bad idea to ride that unless I ride it on the inside, so when we're flipping over to the side, we don't flip the cart. But that's a big boy joke for me. But 6'7", no.
No,
But
6 one, half a dozen to the other because I
that
typically
too.
on the
Yeah.
outside.
See, I hate that. My son does this to me. No,
Yeah,
it's a balance. I hate it. But anyway, that's a story for another day. But when we're at Hershey Park,
that's another
pinball is
miniseries.
when I take my son to Hershey Park every summer, one of the biggest things we do play pinball. We spend probably about at least 20-30 bucks every month just playing pinball. And of course, like you said, I'm glad you mentioned Space Cadet 3D. That was the start of pinball on the PC back in the late 90s on Windows 90. Was it 95 or 98? As a matter of
It
fact, I
was
think
95.
was it 95? So
I
Windows
had it on
95 had
Windows
it.
95. Yeah.
Okay, so I had it on 98. I never had a PC with 95. So I was new to the Windows game thanks to a friend. But nowadays you can play pinball on platforms like Steam. You can play it on your PS4. You can play it on your Xbox. There's that Zen pinball and the 3D pinball stuff, and you can. They have things from like Bally Williams, all the Midway stuff, and then they have a bunch of generic pinball machines, and they even got like movie and TV themes. And when you said Stranger Things, I've seen that actually in person, and it's a really cool pinball machine as well. I like the real time Aliens pinball machine. I played the Star Trek and the Star Wars. Uh, Pinball, since you said this is a subject that could just take the entire day or the whole stream because pinball is like one. I have friends that love pinball. I have friends on Twitch that stream pinball once in a while. My buddy, Angry Old Man Official Gaming, he loves pinball. He has a basement or some room filled with arcade cabinets and pinball machines. That it's like I want to go where he is at and just hang out with him for a day because that's the kind of dream that I want to have is to have a house or a room dedicated to stuff like that. So yeah.
Yeah. I have a game on Epic. It's called Arcade Paradise. It's not installed because you have to actually pay for each arcade game that you
Yeah,
install in the arcade. So even though I own the base
you
game,
got the base game and then they got the DLC behind it. It's a paywall service and I don't like that. That's one
yeah.
thing.
Hey, listen, I love World of Warcraft. We'll get to that later because that's going to be its own episode called "The Rise of the MMORPG." But I don't quote me on that being the title. That's just the theme of that episode. But I love it, even though it's a subscription game. But the difference is, I pay my $15 for the month, and I have unlimited play on everything that's in the game. Something like that arcade game I just mentioned, and the other one that I'm actually looking for right now is it's not just a subscription; it's a microtransaction game. Now, World of Warcraft, to an extent, can be considered a microtransaction because you can go to their store and you can buy stuff like mounts and things like that. But for me, what sets that apart from this is I can still play the game without microtransactions.
Hmm.
I pay my subscription, I can play the game, but for like these games, the um, the arcade one that I mentioned and the pinball one that I'm looking for, you literally have the microtransaction is the only way you can play it. You have to literally buy everything. Um, there are a couple of games on the pinball one that I have been able to play because they run these little specials once in a while
Yeah.
where this game's free and this game is free, but it's temporary and then it goes back to locked. But I over the years I have played a lot of different pinball machines. I played the Space Cadet. I love Star Wars pinball machines and Dungeons and Dragons. Those those are also fun games. Anytime, Pinball FX is what I was thinking of.
Yeah.
Um, and a lot of and I mentioned Gottlieb, David Gottlieb. He's the guy that invented pinball. A lot of the games in Pinball FX are Gottlieb games. I mean, he is the daddy of pinball, so you're gonna expect him to pop up in pretty much anything pinball related. And I didn't do a deep dive on him because it just wasn't what I was after. I'm here for the video game stuff, but I can't talk about video games unless we talk about pinball and arcade games. So I didn't do a real deep dive on him. But from what little bit I did see, it didn't sound like he got caught up in much controversy, as we're going to find out. Other people did, um, other video game related people. But yeah, there is a place here in Colorado. I thought it was in other states as well, but it's like a 50 style diner. In fact, all the servers have 50 style names on their name tags. Not their real name in most cases. I can't say in every case, but typically they have things like Marilyn or Elvis or uh, James, as in James Dean, for their names on their name tags. And they actually have a couple of retro pinball machines at the one over here by my house. And every Gunther Tooties that was open in Colorado had at least one pinball machine. This one in particular, though, that I'm bringing up, it's like an old Native American pinball machine is the theme of the game, and you can look at it and just see the age on it. Not just because it's a pinball machine and a lot of them are old, but like this was an old design. This is probably out of the 50s or the 60s, and it's beautiful. I cannot help when I walk in, even if I don't have time to stop and play, I gotta stop and look at it. It is such a beautiful machine. And if you think about what goes into a pinball machine, you have all these holes that you can drop into throughout the playboard. You have your flippers down here, and some games have the flippers up here. Older games didn't have the flippers, just for the record, but that's way older. But you have to have the path for that ball to return or get shot out of another hole. And then down at the bottom, you have the spot where the ball actually goes out of bounds and your turn is over. But pinball offers hours of endless entertainment because no matter how good you are, that ball is going to bounce differently almost every single time, which is going to lead to something different in the game. Even if you're controlling where it's going, and the noises and the ding and the clang and the click, 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 it all just makes pinball such a wonderful, wonderful thing, in my opinion.
Let me tell you, and I'm glad you said that. When it comes to the sounds, it's like, here's pum 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 pum, and it's oh my god, it's like it becomes repetitive in terms of sound, but you realize, where's this ball going to go next? You keep hearing it, and you got to focus on the ball and where it's going. And you don't want to hit the ball return because, I mean, depending on what pinball game you play, back in the golden era of pinball, you would usually get 5 tries, and then now you play these modern games, you get 3 chances instead of 5, and of course it costs more. And most of the time, the reason you're paying more is because you're paying for the technology that's built into it, and not just the game itself. So, but I love playing pinball. When you were talking about the aging of some of these older pinball tables or pinball machines that don't exactly do the same stuff that today's do. I can tell you this: I go to this arcade over in New Jersey, a nice location called Wildwood. Up on the boardwalk, they have a retro arcade. It used to be called Randy's Funland. He's a cool dude. I would actually like to bring him onto the show sometime, and I'm sure he could talk retro with us all day long. He could tell you about basic games. The game that he tries to keep revived is called Fascination. It's like you roll a ball down a lane, and then you got to get into a certain amount of numbers. It's kind of like it's crazy how all these all these games go. But pinball, I know he would love to talk about pinball. I'm pretty sure he had a couple pinball machines in his arcade, and one of the biggest things that he talks about when it comes to pinball machines is the maintenance. And for anyone that likes playing, after a while, things start to wear thin. In the back, you got those little bouncers that when it hits it, it shoots it whatever direction it goes. Maintenance in the ramps so that way they're clean and not rusted, and the ball doesn't get stuck going around loops. To all that, all the way to the flippers, to where when you hit it, the flipper's not only shooting halfway up and it's not giving all the power anymore, because the communication between the button, the flipper, and the power of the motor that shoots it up. The wear and tear of these things, that's the most important thing of it all. I mean, playing it's one thing, making sure that it's taken good care of, that's a completely different story. So as a pinball enthusiast, it's very important to say, hey, keep your stuff well maintenance every few years, making sure that nothing's broken and you don't have to order replacement parts, because it's not cheap.
Right. And I remember when I was younger, I don't see it on more modern pinball machines that I can remember, but I remember when I was younger, you had to be really careful about how you touched or bumped that pinball machine, because if you shook it just right, it would tilt, and then they had to come over and reset it before you could play again. And like, there's a place here in Colorado, it's called Windfall. They got a bunch of modern pinball machines. We've gone there a couple times for trivia nights. We just did a general trivia the first time, and then we did a Star Wars trivia. Listen, we love Star Wars in this house, but yeah, we sucked at the Star Wars trivia, just for the record. But they have a whole they have a whole arcade, but they have a ton of pinball machines, and they're very modern. I've never seen one of them get the tilt error. But if you're in Colorado, check out Windfall up at the Orchard, especially if you like trivia or you like pinball machines. They got some good food and drink as well. There's a firefighter beer that they sell there that I absolutely love. In fact, if I can find it, I will tell you what the name of it is. It is made by local firefighters, and the proceeds from it actually go to, I don't remember off the top of my head what it goes to, but it goes to a local charity of some sort. So if you get the chance, stop into Windfall, check them out. They're not paying me to say this. I'm just pretty excited about this place.
Cheap
and
plug.
I really, huh?
Cheap plug. I love it.
Yeah, just a cheap plug. Check them out. If you like pinball machines and arcade games, they've got it. If you like some trivia, their trivia people are great. We have interacted with them on 2 separate occasions, and they're pretty amazing. But yeah, check the place out. I'm not seeing the beer on here that I like. You'll see it on the menu, though. It'll tell you it's made by firefighters, and it's tasty. It really is. And maybe that's something we should do at some point. Oh, I got it. When we travel out to Tennessee to do those Christmas pictures that we talked about, we'll find a pinball place somewhere around there. That's what we should do.
Oh, dude. As a matter of fact, speaking of Tennessee, I was down there in 2015. Over in Pigeon Forge, there was actually an arcade right off of the main road, and I saw a ton of games. Now, that was 2015. Now we're talking 10 years later. I'm not sure what things are like there now, but I want to go back there. I'm pretty sure there was an arcade in Nashville as well. I miss Tennessee. I would love to go back soon. And
well, look, there are new arcades popping up all the time. Arcades are becoming popular again. We have multiple places out here where there's a place called Load Up. There's Windfall, like I said, Windfall isn't really an arcade. It's a restaurant with an arcade.
Yeah.
Real quick side note, funny story. When I was younger, my family went somewhere. I don't remember where we were, but I remember my grandparents being with us. So it was some kind of vacation that they were at, and we were in some kind of, I think it was a historic building of some sort. It was huge, and we were looking at the map. And on the map, there was this place labeled arcade. And I remember asking my grandmother if we could go to the arcade. I mean, I mean, it's not like we have a set itinerary for the day. We're just here hanging out, doing stuff. Can we go to the arcade, right? She's like, yeah, we can do that. So we walk over where the map says the arcade is. There is not a video game in sight. No pinball, no video games, no air hockey, no foosball.
What
There
kind of
is
arcade is this?
there are no games. I'm like, did we miss the arcade? Did we go to the wrong place on the map? What is going on? And my grandmother stopped for a minute. She was a little confused herself because we both thought that it was going to be a video game arcade. Well, arcade is not just a
A video
uh,
game term.
video game term. In architecture, an arcade is a series of arches supported by columns or piers, forming a covered walkway, passageway, or support for upper levels, found both inside buildings like church naves and outside sheltering pedestrians. So we were in the right spot. We were in the arcade,
But it wasn't
but
an arcade.
it wasn't that kind of arcade.
And I'm glad you said that because that happened to me when I was a kid. A lot.
Yeah, I mean, it's
So
it's not hard to get confused by that when you're
I'll,
younger.
I'll give you a quick story here. Since I mentioned Hershey Park, this is where it happened because back then, when you would come into the park, after you go through the gates, you go up this little hill. You have the little shop, you have the villa, you have a restaurant, and then right in front of you there was these arches with all these lights, and it was called the Starlight Arcade. Everyone would say, "Where's the games at?" And there was no games. But down below, down the ground, there was like stars, kind of like think of it like the Walk of Fame in Hollywood, and you had like famous bands that used to come through, and there was like Air Supply, there was like a couple other bands, and they were a part of the Starlight Arcade. And I was like, this sucks. They should just give it a different name. Why don't they call it something else? But no, Starlight Arcade was the only thing. And but there was an arcade right down the hill. Right when you came in, there was an arcade to the right, and they had all the great 80s games. They had Outrun and Double Dragon and even Street Fighter. It was heaven, and all the way up into the late 90s before they closed that up and ended up replacing it with something else. But yeah, the terminology of arcade, um, they should call it the video game arcade instead of just like, oh, we got an arcade. I don't know. It's just the placement term is really, really confusing.
Well, and the thing about it was sure if they call a video game arcade to set it apart. As a kid, all I saw was the word arcade, and I still would have been confused because they were using the right terminology for what it was, and I misunderstood. I did not know that there was a different kind of arcade. You know what I mean? So,
Yeah.
but I spent a lot of time growing up in arcades. If I had a chance to go to an arcade, I did. By the way, I did look it up. It wasn't on the website, but I found the beer I was looking for. If you are ever in Colorado and you end up at Windfall Brewing, the beer is called Fire at the Donut Shop. It is officers from Greeley PD and firefighters from Hudson Professional Firefighters, local 5213. It's something that they do together with Windfall. It's a one-of-a-kind beer made with Krispy Kreme donuts. And $1 from every beer goes to a charity chosen by the fire department, so you can drink for a good cause. So seriously, get in if you're in Colorado, try that beer, play some pinball, do some trivia. Sean, that's my boy. I like him. Sean, I was gonna invite you on tonight, but you didn't answer me in the Discord, so we just went ahead and went live without you. So maybe next time if you want to join, I'll give you
Yeah,
more
because we
notice.
definitely want to have guests on the show. That's for sure.
Yeah, so far we've talked about pinball, and we've talked at great length about pinball, mostly because after I gave a little bit of background on pinball, we had to talk about our experiences with pinball. You know what I mean? But the whole purpose of this is to talk about video games. And we can't really, and like I said, we couldn't really talk about video games without talking about pinball because honestly, I think pinball had a big hand in kicking off the video game industry. In 1971, the first commercial arcade game, Computer Space, was created by Nolan Bushnell and Ted Dabney. Um, you need a new body first. Are you AI already?
He's going to turn into a VTuber.
All right, listen. After we finish the video game thing, maybe we'll do another series where I explain why I don't understand VTubers, just for the record. But that's not here for tonight. Anyway, Computer Space was created by Nolan Bushnell and Ted Dabney. If those names sound familiar to the gamers out there, they should. They later founded Atari. And I know that you guys have all heard of Atari. Yes! See? Somebody in the chat knew. I knew they would. The rise of the video games had begun. A year later, in 1972, the Magnavox Odyssey, the world's first home video game console, was released. Ralph Baer invented it and based it on his brown box prototype. It brought simple dot and line games like tennis. Remember that. That's the game that you want to remember. Games like tennis to home TVs using plastic screen overlays for color and graphics. This is your daddy's or grandpa's, as the case may be, graphics. Tennis predates Atari's Pong and laid the foundation for all future home gaming, despite early marketing confusion limiting its success. Before we go any further on what I have typed up, we got to talk about that. So before the show, we were discussing all this, and we were talking about the fact that, well, Styles mentioned that Pong was the first video game, and I told him no, it actually wasn't. It was actually tennis, and tennis was exactly what I described Pong to be. You bounce that little ball back and forth between lines, and that's what tennis was. So then Pong comes along, Atari comes along and does basically exactly that. They make a game that's exactly that. You know? Now, before we go any further, I want to discuss tennis and Pong. I know my boy over here, Styles, is kind of old enough to remember Pong like I am. No. We are not yelling at clouds tonight. We are talking to these fine people in the chat. And each other, because we can't do this show without talking to each other. What are your memories of playing the most simple video game of all time? 2 sticks going up and down, bouncing a ball back and forth.
But let me tell you something, Sonny boy. Using that paddle to make sure that stick went up and down, making sure that ball went into the other guy's net, and making sure they didn't get to hit the ball in return. Let me tell you, Pong was fun and stressful all at the same time. And over the years, Pong evolved into other game aspects as well. You had Pong, and then I'm glad you said the Atari 2600, because behind me I have a game for the 2600 called Video Game Olympics, and what's in there? Several hundred different versions of Pong. You could play it like soccer, you could play it like hockey. Yeah, they themed everything off of Pong, but Pong itself was quite fun, and they actually built that into certain games on the Atari back on the disc-based days, where you would end up playing it on loading screen. So Pong carries a long history, or as you like to say, tennis. But that's basically what it was. It was tennis with sticks and a ball and a line in the middle of the screen. But and I think you went up to what? You went up to 9, and then as soon as you get to number 10, that is basically it. But Pong was a game of the ages. I remember seeing the very first Pong machine, and how that was the weirdest looking concept. It was a semi yellowish brownish box. It had Pong over top. You had 2 little dials and the start button, and that was it. That's how you played. Until it came to console, and then you ended up getting the Atari paddle, and you would play against the computer or against a friend who you want to turn into an enemy, because if you beat them in Pong, they're no longer your friend. So
I need you to throw something up on the screen real quick for me, Styles.
Got it.
So we talked about the Magnavox Odyssey, and I actually want you guys to see what this console looked like because I feel like it's important to know where we got our start. This was the original Odyssey, and there's not much to that. I mean, look at that. It's it's a console,
It's
but
just a box with a big ass cord on it, and it control. As a matter of fact, I see it now. So you got player one on one side and player two on the other. Or no, that's horizontal and vertical. Wait, what the? I don't think I've seen it like that before.
yeah, that's the original. That was the 1971 version of the Odyssey. It's simplistic in design. I mean, yeah, they tried to make it look fancy. You got this trim down here that looks like wood, but we all know that's just like tape. That's
Yeah.
just designed to look like wood. Then you have this brown finish up top with the white housing, and then a black base, and then your controller, as it were, your paddle basically is a white box with a brown top and looks like a switch on top, and then knobs on the side to control your paddles. And this is this is where we got our start, guys. This was the first home console that people made. We have come a very very long way since then, which you can't prove by looking at the current generation of Xbox because that thing looks even more simplistic in design than this. At least this one has some signs of life, whereas the current Xbox is a white box that just sits on your table.
And I'm glad you said that because over time, the evolution of Pong, it went from more than just that. Now, here's a couple more that you can look at. Over time, they have given us different versions. Of course, Atari Telegames is their secondary company name, more like a sister company. TV Game 15. I mean, there was hundreds of these types out there. Back in the 70s and 80s it started the competitive market for computerized gaming, and we haven't seen anything like it before. Now, hence, we had computer games, but it wasn't like that. It was more like, think of it like an RPG style where you were typing into the computer and it was like a command prompt and then it would respond back. That was early day computing. If you want to learn more about that, just watch the movie War Games. And I don't mean the one with WCW. I love War Games myself. I mean, they made a video game out of it on the PlayStation, but it was nothing like what we played or watched. But I mean,
there's another War Games movie that came out not too long ago. Actually, maybe that's the one I was thinking of right there. It's called The Dead Code. It's from 2008, and it was similar, but it wasn't as good as the original War Games. Which came out in 1983. It's an amazing movie. If you have Prime Video, you can pull that up there and stream it. Also, Prime Video did not pay me to say that, but if you guys want to, you know where to find me. So I was talking about there was an overlay that you put onto your TV to get your graphics. So really, you're just moving lines up and down, but this is kind of what that overlay looked like. And if you notice, the front of the Odyssey opens up, and you put your game disc into the front of it. But this is not our current disc. It's not the CD looking disc, DVD looking disc. This one was a floppy, and yes, that's really what it was called, floppy disk. For those of you out there that are too young to remember floppy disk drives, and that's how we played our games. I mean, that is a horrible looking TV, just for the record. And yeah, sometimes the overlays didn't fit all TVs. I mean, this, especially as TVs got bigger, but this is where we started, guys. I mean, yeah, we talked about the fact that we had the pinball and the arcade games, but for true home gaming, this was it. This is where we started, and it's amazing to me that you look back on this now and you realize that there's an overlay on that TV to give you that tennis court feel. And then I look at something like Arkham Knight, and I'm like, we have come so far.
Oh, we definitely have. I mean, the shift in technology, the advancements, seeing how back in those days there was limited technology. I mean, it was there, but it wasn't designed for core concepts like this. Like I said, gaming started out as more of a prompt based thing before they started saying, how can we make games playable? Because we would end up with things like Oregon Trail, one of our very first computer games that we all grew up to learn and love, the nightmare of all games. But always died in descent of tree, so it didn't matter. Always
So
died at the end of the river.
I'm good at admitting when I'm wrong. The games that we just saw there on the Odyssey were not floppy disk games. Those came
They
later.
look like RAM sticks.
Yeah, I just sent you the picture over it. It is more of a like card with pin readers on it. If you want to pop that up.
Yep, doing that right now. Once it loads up for me. God, Facebook's been slow for me this week. All right, let me go ahead and pop that one back up, and here you go, y'all. So
That
yeah,
was such a horrible version of Wheel of Fortune too. I remember that one.
oh my god. So seeing this right here, think of it like an Atari 2600 connecting pin or connector going into the machine without the full shell protecting the piece or the context. That's basically what it gives. That's an idea. And think of how dirty these things got, and you had to find a way to keep it clean. Meaning, stuff like this would have to go into like a plastic bag, like a Ziploc, or even a protective case, because things like this you don't want it just sitting out and around. Because one of the biggest things, as a tech owner, is electrostatic discharge. You don't want ESD
Yeah, but
because
at least we didn't have to blow the dust out of this like we did with Nintendo
no,
cartridges.
you had to use a Q-tip and 70% rubbing alcohol because that's all we had back in the day, and pray that it would actually work afterwards. I can't tell you how many carts I've cleaned over the course of 5-6 years, probably about 200, and if not more. And I'm not just talking Nintendo. We're also talking Super and Genesis and even Master Systems. So keeping them contacts clean is a very important necessity to these systems, because if they don't read, they don't play.
Yeah, I remember well the days of blowing the cartridges, and let's just say that I'm happy we've come a long way. As much as I love Nintendo, a little side note on Magnavox though, they are a historic electronics brand. You have probably seen, or even you may even have one of their TVs. What you may not know is that they have been known for their TVs since the 1940s. And yes, for anybody out there that's a little younger watching the show, there were TVs 80 plus years ago. I'm not old enough to remember that. Styles isn't old enough to remember that. But yeah, there were TVs 80 plus years ago. So, don't come at me with, there's no way there was TVs back then. Yeah, there were. They just weren't nearly as good as what we have now. Um, One of the first controversies that we are going to discuss comes about because of the two games we were just discussing, tennis and Pong. On one side, you had Magnavox, and on the other side, you have Atari. In 1974, Magnavox sued Atari for patent infringement over Pong. Magnavox claimed Atari copied the Odyssey's paddle and ball games. This led to a significant settlement where Atari became a licensee. So they were allowed to sell it, but they had to pay for the right to sell it to Magnavox. But I don't think that really hurt Atari that badly because
Atari kind of succeeded for decades.
that kind of hurts, Sean. That hurts. Still love you, but that hurts. Um, but I mean, they raked in the money off of Pong. And I'll be honest with you. What is the oldest video game you can think of? If you ask that to a random person, Pong. is
No.
probably going to be the oldest one you're going to hear. People don't remember tennis. I didn't even know about tennis till I started doing some research for this show. So, yeah, in the long run, even though they had to pay Magnavox for the right to sell Pong, I don't think it hurt Atari one bit. It may have sounded like it at the time, but I don't think it hurt them one bit. And this led to a significant settlement where Atari became a licensee. But Magnavox didn't stop there. This kicked off a storm of similar lawsuits against many video game companies where Magnavox won or settled all of them. Not only did this establish the core principle that early paddle games infringed on the Odyssey's fundamental tech, but it also shaped early video game law. And how much of that do we still see today? I mean, companies have tried to release similar games to World of Warcraft, for example, and they had to go in and make some changes. How many MMOs have you sat down and played that have basically the same controls as World of Warcraft versus how many of those MMOs have the same controls as each other? You know, I mean, this still bears true today, some of these video game laws that got set because of Atari getting sued by a TV company.
Imagine that. You get sued by a TV company because of a copyright, basically an infringement. But in the end, Magnavox didn't even survive in that because Atari kept pushing forward. It was more than just Pong. I mean, they had other great games out there. I mean, one of the greatest games of all time. I mean, I you know what? I see where Magnavox is coming from here, and it's completely not fair. This game was an abomination. I'd rather play the arcade version of this game because let me tell you, the same level every single time. So I'm going to be with Sean when it comes to that game and call BS because Magnavox should have just went after them for Pac-Man. But I mean, there were so many games that the Atari 2600 got invested in. But it wasn't just Atari that got their hands into all these games as well. I mean, you still had Intellivision behind them. You had ColecoVision. Now, hence they were years later, but behind that, you had a lifetime of companies competing and promoting their version of each game. And as time went by, games from each system looked a little bit different, if not better. And Magnavox wouldn't have been able to compete with any of them because they would have put Pong on their systems as well. And what would Magnavox say is, oh, well, we got beat by more than Atari. We got beat by Intellivision. We got beat by ColecoVision. We what else would there have been? We got beat by Commodore, Amiga. I mean, there was so many lined up, computer companies out there making the same game that Magnavox couldn't keep up with just a certain part of the patent. Now, if you want my honest take on it, you could have taken part of that patent and then modified the rest of it to where it had nothing to do with them anymore and reverse the algorithm on the source code anyway. But Pong being the game it was, it was a game for the generations, and it became a generational disaster for one company because of a certain patent issue.
Yeah, I had to Google this because I had to know. So Magnavox sued and won or settled out of court all the lawsuits that they filed back in the early days of gaming. And that's kind of how we got some of the video game law we have. However, if you think about it, the first company they sued was Atari.
Yeah.
And if you look it up, if you Google Magnavox, Magnavox does not actively develop new video games or consoles anymore. Nope. So who did it really hurt in the long run, right?
Exactly. That was reputation right there.
Right. And now they went back to their focus on TVs and now they do audio as well. And they do it under Curtis International after Philips acquired Magnavox. When did Philips acquire Magnavox, you ask? In the 70s.
And Philips made their own game system, but it wasn't until the 90s.
Right. The original Odyssey console's legacy lives on through retro enthusiasts, academic study, and new takes on the concept, like modern reimaginings. Um, in fact, in some places you'll find it called Philips Magnavox, but they the Magnavox side of things got away from um, got away from damn it. Basically, what we just got told in the chat is TVs are actually 200 years old. Magnavox ended up getting away from the video game design very early on. And honestly, if I had to pick a reason for that, it's because after all those lawsuits, they probably were the black sheep of the video game world and they didn't have a choice. But I find it weird that they won or settled, which means they got paid by all those companies, and then not even 10 years later, in the same decade where they had all those lawsuits, they had to sell to Philips and they got away from video games.
Which was probably the smartest decision they ever made because, well, after everything that happened. So in other words, they got Thanos snapped.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, you can still find Magnavox products. Go to Best Buy, tell them you want a Magnavox TV. They do make modern TVs, and you'll probably find a nice one. I personally like my LG TV, but we won't talk about that. And I gotta be honest though, you have to give credit where credit is due.
Mm-hmm.
How early would we have gotten home consoles if Magnavox hadn't stepped in and said, these video arcade games and the pinball machines, they're great. But what if we let people play video games at home? Magnavox is the daddy of home video games. There's no denying that. And so I think we got to give credit where credit's due. And even though they screwed their own pooch, you got to give them credit for starting the video game revolution.
Oh, absolutely. You don't take nothing away from them for what they created. But in the end, if they start getting all greedy on how other companies want to make something that they made, regardless if they make it better or worse, don't go after them. I mean, I understood the whole patent issue, but if you're going after them for more than that, if it had more to do about the game than it did about the patent, then that's where you're going to tombstone your career and then you'll just fall rock bottom.
Yeah, I mean, look, you had some successes with your lawsuits, but where are you now? You shot yourself in the foot. I kind of miss the competition. I mean, I wasn't alive for it, but I kind of miss the idea of the competition that they sparked. And you still see that some today. It's not as prolific in the video game world because honestly, it's Nintendo and everybody else for the competition, for the exclusivity and stuff like that. I mean, you've got Mario Kart and Mario stuff and all that, and those are Nintendo exclusives. But if you look at it, almost every other game is available across PlayStation, Xbox, PC. And if you know where to look, you can still get Nintendo games for your PC.
Mm-hmm.
But you can't really get them for the PlayStation or for the Xbox. So really, Nintendo's the only one that does that exclusivity anymore. Now, if Halo ever decided to revive itself and start making more games, that would probably remain exclusive to the Xbox. But I can't guarantee that with the way things have started bleeding over between the two companies. I never thought there'd be a time when Microsoft and Sony would be like, hey, we got this game. Why don't we, put it out and we both make money off it. And then we can do that with that game over there. You know what I mean?
Oh, absolutely. And right now, I mean, they're going to monopolize on all this, but sooner or later, it's going to become over competitive. And so if Microsoft starts sharing their content to, say, Sony, and Sony makes more money out of it, Microsoft can't get mad when they beat them in the sales. Yeah, that's another thing in the future that we can talk about is, you know, the trades of the trades of the business, the economics of the business, the mass sales, the profits. There's a whole lot to talk about behind the scenes of all this versus what we're talking about right now. And being able to do this with you, we're gonna have so much to talk about in the future, man. Is you could talk about games for generations and people would be hooked.
Oh yeah, I mean, listen, we're approximately, if we just look at the video game side of it, not the pinball side, if we just look at the video game side of it and we include arcade video games, we're already looking at currently 54, almost 55 years of history on video game. And even if we did it decade by decade, we could be talking about this for a very long time. I don't want to have people sit through too much about this in a single sitting. So that's part of the reason we're breaking it up into several episodes. And that's part of the reason that we have come to the point of the show that we're at. I'm going to tell you just a little bit more, and then we're going to go from there. This wouldn't be the last time Atari was embroiled in controversy, though. Next time, we're going to talk about several other lawsuits that Atari was involved in. We're going to talk about some more arcade stuff because we're getting into the 80s, guys, and the arcade was huge in the 80s. Mm-hmm. Take it from a couple of guys that grew up in the 80s. The arcade was huge in the 80s, and that was also when the first 8-bit system came out, the NES. So we're going to talk about that. And listen, I'm going to give you guys some homework since we're going to be going into Donkey Kong. Yes. Since we're going to be going into 8-bit discussion next time, I suggest if you haven't already seen it, and it's the right time of year, get over there on HBO Max, check out 8-Bit Christmas with Neil Patrick Harris, and it will give you a very good idea of what Christmas was when the Nintendo came out. If you weren't alive to experience it, trust me, that movie is great for showing you what the experience was. And yes, we will talk about the urban legend that became truth, inspiring a documentary along the way. And if you don't know what urban legend I'm talking about, well, Ether knows what urban legend I'm talking about. He already mentioned it earlier in the show. But yeah, we're going to talk about that urban legend as well. But we've been wanting to talk about stuff other than wrestling for a while. Not stop talking about wrestling. We want to continue that. We love talking about wrestling, but we feel like there are other topics that we could hit on. And this just happens to be one that Styles and I share a passion for. If you don't know, he goes live on Kick. I said that in the intro, but for those of you that weren't here that early, he goes live on Kick. He plays some retro games. He plays some other video games. I play video games almost every night unless I'm doing a show. However, it's early enough tonight that I'm probably going to play Tomb Raider once we get off the air. And so I just thought, why don't we go live and talk about video games? And for the record, Ether, you didn't see that, and neither did I. Let's talk about some video games. But I didn't want to just jump right into going, yeah, so this game on the PS5, I wanted to kind of give you some background first. And Styles is all for this because, number one, he got to talk about pinball games. We didn't talk about skee-ball. Why did we not talk about skee-ball? Well, because skee-ball is for first dates, and this is a podcast about video games. So we will talk about skee-ball on another topic series,
Hey, I like skee-ball. I got nothing against skee-ball. I play that in the summertime with my son. I wouldn't call that a date, but yeah, I'm right with you right there. It is definitely first date material.
Yeah. So, and listen, I do want to know more about what video games you guys like. If you are a video game player, even if it's casual or avid, I don't care. If you have a video game that you enjoy playing, please reach out to us. Let us know what it is. I want to talk about it. I want to talk about video games from all generations. Yes, we're going to slowly work our way through. We will probably in the middle of, I mean, like tonight, we talked about modern stuff and we didn't go into depth about it, but we talked about it. So if you have a favorite video game, I don't care what era it's from, tell us. You can tweet it to us. We're going to give you our right.
I got something for you.
It says it right there. You can tweet at us what your favorite game is, what your favorite series, what your favorite system is. I personally play on my PC, but I have it.
There is a special guest I would like to have on the show one time, and he's my best friend. He's my mentor. Ether knows exactly who I'm talking about, and
he's the one. You're gonna have to get Sean's approval for that.
Sean, he said yes already. He just doesn't know it.
He just doesn't know. Don't put words in his mouth.
But he was the first runner-up to this competition in 1990 for the Nintendo World Championship.
Fred Savage?
That's the Wizard, dummy. wrong NWC. But hey, that movie was based off of the NWC. And Jimmy Woods won. And so should my bro. He should have won it. But he missed it by one Tetris. But you know what? First runner-up, he's still a winner in my eyes. Let me tell you. He's the fan favorite out of this whole thing. Hats off to Thor for winning. But my best friend, my brother, Mr. Rich Ambler, let me tell you, if you want to learn, go into Google and type in Rich Ambler Nintendo. Rich and I, we run our own community right here on Discord, known as Team Retro Bros. We created the group back in 2018, put it into full effect during the pandemic for anyone that has retro passion. So if you would like an invite to our server, I will have no problem. I'd be more than happy to bring you into our server so you can learn some more stuff by him as well. Because this guy, he is one of the pioneers to the retro gaming community. He is loved by all and respected by everyone, except for those who don't like the way he plays games because he's better than who they are at playing it. So it just, but let me tell you, I would love to have him on the show because I can guarantee he would love to talk about Nintendo 8-bit stuff. Or is the UPS slip set Nintendo? Because the guy who typed up the package I sent away, I sent him a Nintendo Switch Lite last week, and he unboxed it on stream, and it said Nintendo, Nentender. I said to myself, "The hell is a Nintendo?" The guy was about 70 years old doing all this stuff at UPS, and I was like, all right, you know what? But yeah, his name is Tenester. He streams on Kick as well. He can show you how he plays NWC. If all you gotta do is just sit there and watch. He's a grandmaster at Tetris, just like I want to be, because I'm not that great at it. But let me tell you, he's a phenomenal player. He's a phenomenal gamer. He's a great friend. I've known him since 2018. He found me on X because I made some NWC posts of me playing it on an emulator, which I didn't know it ran off of a timer. I just figured it played all three, and then whenever its time is up, that's it. But well, that's the point of a timer. But yeah, I only got like 5 minutes instead of the competition time of 6 minutes 21 seconds, and I sucked. But now I'm in the top 10 on Twin Galaxies with that game with a 3.2 million. So there's a whole lot that you can learn that you haven't haven't read up on yet. And my bro Nestor will definitely teach you the ways of Nintendo.
Now, listen, I have been around the video game world for, well, let's be honest, pretty much my whole life.
Same.
And I heard the name Tenester before Twitch, before I ever got into podcasting of any sort. And I still say, I'm going to need Sean to make a ruling here. Sean, do you approve of Tenester coming on the show as a guest to talk Nintendo? While we wait for his answer, Ether, I don't know how our YouTube settings are. You can try to post the URL in the chat, but I don't know if it'll work. If you're not in the Discord, I'll have Styles grab you the link to the Discord. Join our Discord. You can drop it there in the general chat. For tonight, though, I think I think we've covered what I wanted to cover tonight. We made a really good start on teaching Sean all about the world of video games. We will definitely be continuing this. I don't know when we'll do the next episode. Next week is Christmas. Okay. He says you're good. He approves it, Styles.
I love Nintendo. I mean, Nintendo. Let me tell you, you're gonna love having Rich on here in the future. I'll talk to him probably next week after I come home from my road trip. If he's around tomorrow, I'll talk to him as well. I mean, we stay in touch a lot. I mean, either I call him, he calls me, or we DM each other. I know he's a busy man with a busy life these days, but when he makes the time for gaming, he's always fun to watch. He's full of gaming energy. I'll tell you that right now. If you want to learn how to be a retro gaming master in the 8-bit systems, he's the guy to go to. He'll show you the way he showed me. I mean, I'm the guy that has now put Super Mario to rest at 5 minutes and 19 seconds. 10 minutes with Mario 2, about 23, 25 minutes on Mario 3. Yeah, I mean, I've learned the tricks of the trade from that guy right there. He's taught me a whole lot, and I still find ways to progress. But one day I do look forward to playing against him in NWC on a split screen on here and getting everyone to cheer everyone on.
How do I do this? I know it's not going to let me put we tried it before. It wouldn't let me put the Discord link in the YouTube chat.
Oh, I'll have to add that into the about info down below later. I forget how it works exactly. I think you got to put it in through YouTube itself.
Wait, hold on. Ether, tell me if that showed up on your end. It did not show up on the restream.
If not, I can just send it to him then.
Okay. Yeah, that works. If it didn't show up in the YouTube chat, go ahead and send that to him so he can join the server. That way he'll know. And I think we're going to create a new channel in the server for 8-Bit Unleashed.
Sounds good.
That way we can keep the wrestling and the video game stuff separate in the Discord server. The general chat will still be the general chat, but
yeah.
Okay, yeah, it didn't show up. It didn't show up over here in the restream chat.
Yeah, don't worry about it. I'll take care of everything after streaming
and get him in there.
Yeah, and if you want, I can always shoot you an invite to the TRB Discord. You can see exactly how we run. You can see how we run the ship on there. Let me tell you, it's pretty well packed.
Shoot that over to me in a Discord message after the show. Because as soon as we hop off air, I've had most of this while we've been on air, so I got to go take care of something as soon as we go off air.
Sounds good.
But listen, guys, I appreciate you for tuning in. I want this to be educational, beneficial, and entertaining. I want you guys to know what I like. We want to talk about what you like. Styles is here to be a not so pretty face. Part of the reason I asked Styles if he wanted to do this is because I know he streams video games. If you see the background behind him, you know this man likes video games. And I thought, who better to be a part of a show about video games than Nestor himself? I mean, CM Styles.
Hey, don't worry, we'll get him here too. So,
but I thank you guys for tuning in. We're going to keep doing this. I don't know where it's going to end up after we run down the history of gaming up until now. I'm enjoying talking video game stuff. I think we should keep going. We can always show the trailers for upcoming games once we get to that point, stuff like that. Keep in mind some of your favorite games, some of your most anticipated games that were shown during the Video Game Awards are looking at a 2028 to 2030 release, so don't get too excited about the trailers that you saw. However, I want you to get very excited about one trailer that showed at the Video Game Awards, and that is Mega Man. And the reason for that is it had me questioning, what the hell year is this when I saw it in the trailers? I am excited. I have not enjoyed a modern Mega Man game as much as I've enjoyed the early days of Mega Man, but it's still Mega Man, and it's still towards the top of my list of video game series.
Yeah, I mean, and I'm glad you said that. And on top of that, you were talking about the future of the show, how we can do things. Now, we can run amok between the 70s, which we covered, the 80s. There's a lot to talk about the 80s. There's a lot about the 90s, early 2000s, mid 2000s, all the way up to current. And then we can always go back in time. And while we talk about things, we could talk about select list of games per show from every year and every era. So there's a whole there's a big world to explore. There's more than Nintendo. There was Sega that was out there. There's so you had Sega, you had Nintendo. After a while, it went from Sega to Nintendo, and then Sony jumped in, and then Microsoft got their hands into things. I mean, you got a full competitive market from the late 70s, early 80s, all the way up to now, and so many games, hardware. We'll cover as much as we can, and like you said, not just entertaining, but for educational purposes. And my ugly mug, I like talking about this stuff, and then everyone's gonna see the excitement on my face when we do it.
Before we give out the socials, I want to leave you with one unarguable truth, something that you're not going to hear very many places, partially because some people still have hope, and the company thinks that you want to believe in them. I'm going to tell you right now, GTA 6 is never going to be released. The only thing you will ever get from Rockstar in the future in the GTA series is a remastered GTA 5. Remember that? And Styles, how can they find you?
So I don't use social media anymore. I deleted X. You won't find me there. But where's my hand? This hand right here. This hand is pointing at my screen name, my username on Kick. Deactivated Styles, just like that. Find me there. Follow me there. When I stream games, you'll see that name pop up right away. And of course, that right there, that's who I am. That's what I do almost all the time when I'm not playing modern games. It's always Nintendo or Nintendo. So,
and listen, guys, just because this is video game based does not mean that you shouldn't go follow the rest of the Ramblers, because we are a crew, we are a family, and we stick together. So if you want to follow the other two Ramblers, you can find the Baron at Scumbag Jordan with 3 N's.
yeah.
You can find the podcast itself, which is the best way to find Dizzy, at the Ramblers Pod. You can find me at Max Magus. You can find my other show, Random Shots, at Our Shots Podcast. You can listen to it pretty much any place podcasts are at, like Amazon Prime and stuff like that. Or you can go to random-shots.net to listen to us. The Discord will pop up in the description of this video. So if you're listening to this down the road, the Discord is there. That is our Ramblers Unleashed Discord. Come interact with us. We want to get to know you. We want to learn more about you. But please tune in next time. Next week is Christmas, so Merry Christmas, everybody. Yep. As of right now, I'm not promising a Ramblers Unleashed or an 8-Bit Unleashed next week. We will do our best to get back into it the following week, but
I know we're going into New Year's Eve and everything, but you know what? I'm not so worried about New Year's Eve because I'm not a go out party guy anymore. So
I don't go out and party.
I'm too old for that.
We play board games and video games here for New Year's.
I'll just play Game Boy games. I mean,
there you go.
I don't need nothing else. I don't need alcohol and all that to go.
Yeah, Merry Christmas, Sean. Merry Christmas, Ether. Merry Christmas to anybody else that's listening to this later. We will not see you next week. We'll be in the Discord, so feel free to interact with us there. I'll probably drop a Christmas message. I did it for Thanksgiving, but thank you for tuning in. Thank you for listening to us. Please tune into the next one when we get into everything 80s, including all of Atari's controversies, the rise of Nintendo. And I say the rise of Nintendo, but anybody who knows the history of Nintendo knows that the rise of Nintendo isn't necessarily in the 80s. That's just when they really blew up because of the whole point of this podcast, video games. So Thank you guys for tuning in. We'll see you guys again soon. Hope you enjoyed it. Thank you.
Yep. Have a good night, y'all.
You made me fall off the cliff.